Welcome, Chesil class, to the CBBS bedtime hour. I'm here, ready for bed, tucked up with my dressing gown. I've got my hot chocolate ready, and I'm joined by some of my friends. I've got Alien, and I'm sitting on him, but I've got Sully, and they're here to listen to today's story as well. Today's story is going to be Rosie, Revere, engineer. And we're going to be doing some work on this story over the next few weeks. So let's get started. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. Here she is. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed, where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. The uncle she loved most was Zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head, from parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps pythons away. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud, but Fred slapped his knee and chuckled out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat and then looked away. "I love it," Fred hooted. "Oh, I truly do." But Rosie Revere knew that couldn't be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day kept her dreams to herself. And that's how it went until one autumn day her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great-great-great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo who worked building airplanes a long time ago. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and the goals she had checked off her list one by one. She gave a sad smile as she looked at the sky. "The only thrill left on my list is to fly." But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams. That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, "No, not I." But questions are tricky and some hold on tight, as this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly. She worked and she worked till the day was half gone. Then she hauled her cheese copter out onto the lawn to give her invention a test, just to see the ridiculous flop that it might turn out to be. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The helio cheese copter spluttered and twitched. It floated a moment, then whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed until she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, "Oh no, never, not again will I try to build something to splutter and spin. or build with a lever, a switch or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer. She turned round to leave, but the great-great-aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close, and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. "You did it! Hooray! It's the perfect first try. This great flop is over, it's time for the next." Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. "I failed," said dear Rosie, "it's just made of trash." "Didn't you see it? The cheese-copter crashed." "Yes," said her great aunt, "it crashed, that is true. But first it did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew." Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next. She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure comes from someone who quits. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rosie tied her headscarf around Rosie and said, her to sleep with a smile ear to ear, to dream bold dreams of a great engineer. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 built gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. Each with a perfect failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. So we've got a flying house, a helmet that can see lots of different ways, a tree vehicle, and a walking disco. Well, thank you very much for joining me for the CBeebies Bedtime Hour, brought to you by me, Mr. Copping from Chesil Class. I have one further activity before you go to sleep tonight, and that is I would like you to build or draw or create your own wacky invention, just like the cheese copter. It doesn't have to be something that flies. It could be something that would make your house better in any way. Something to do with a microwave or a cooker or a game that you could do. Build it, design it, take a photo of it, stick it in your English book and label it. I want to see these wacky creations, these amazing inventions inside of your head. I want you to be like Rosie Revere. I look forward to seeing everything that you've created, and thank you very much once again for joining me. Goodbye.